Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and today I'm going to be revealing my list of the top 6 veteran quarterback options for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2026. Yeah, the Steelers might be drafting a quarterback next spring, but they're also likely to sign a veteran quarterback to start Week 1 for this football team next year. Today we're going to be going over the 6 quarterback options I can realistically see the Steelers bringing in for the 2026 season as it stands right now. Now, before we get into the content today, we talk some quarterbacks here on Steelers Talk. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Daily Steelers videos, 2 of them a day on this channel, breaking down the latest news and rumors surrounding the black and gold, breaking news coverage if there's massive injury news or if Omar Khan makes a trade or if we make a signing in free agency this offseason. We're going to be the first ones to get a video up here on YouTube for you guys to enjoy. Also, we go live twice a week during the week, and then we go live again for our live watch parties, 3 watch parties per week here on the show. And all that content, guys, is 100% free. But there's a reason why we're the only individually run Steelers news program here on YouTube with over 100,000 subscribers. So click that subscribe button if you haven't already to join our family today. All right, so first, let's talk best case scenario, because I think the best case scenario is not impossible, but it is unlikely. All right, and that scenario is to trade for Matthew Stafford of the Los Angeles Rams. Okay, and Stafford, he's having an MVP caliber season right now. He's in the thick of it with Drake May and all these other guys for, the top individual honor in the league this year. Having a fantastic season. The Rams are certainly in the Super Bowl contenders window. And, next year, Cam Hayward is in his farewell season, or at least that's what he's been saying. He's been saying this is going to be the final year or the final contract of his career, and next year is the final year of that contract. So it appears next season will be Cam Hayward's final year to get a ring and win as a champion as a Pittsburgh Steeler, and you better believe this organization is going to do whatever it takes to try and juice up this roster for one run to try and get Cam Hayward a ring, okay? And Stafford, out of all the quarterbacks that will be available next offseason or potentially available next offseason, gives you the best chance to win a title. No doubt about it. He is a top 5 quarterback in the National Football League right now. I would put him behind the top 4, Mahomes, Lamar, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow. I'd put Stafford right behind those guys, and he's absolutely the kind of guy that can win you a Super Bowl. He has a game-winning drive in a Super Bowl, all right? He has won one before, and he's obviously an MVP caliber guy even at his age because he's the front runner to win it right now. So if he becomes available next offseason, the Steelers have to go all in to try and get him, in my opinion, if you want to try and get Cam Hayward a ring in 2026. But the problem with this possibility is that it's pretty unlikely, all right? The Rams obviously are playing very good football, and it just doesn't really make a lot of sense to trade away an MVP caliber quarterback when you're in the thick of trying to win Super Bowls yourself. They might even win the Super Bowl this year. The only way I really think Stafford becomes available for the Pittsburgh Steelers to trade for next year is if he decides to play and the Rams trade for Joe Burrow, okay? Because obviously Burrow is also a superstar-level quarterback, but he's much younger, and the Rams have been looking to kind of move off of Stafford. They've been in kind of a year-to-year situation. Now, they're not going to move off of him unless they get the right guy, but Burrow would certainly fit that bill as the right guy to replace Matthew Stafford in L.A. But unfortunately, I really doubt Joe Burrow gets traded from Cincinnati. They would be idiotic to want to trade him, so Burrow would have to demand a trade out, and my guess is the Bengals are going to do whatever it takes to accommodate him. If he wants Zach Taylor, their head coach, fired, they're going to fire him, and they're going to hire the head coach he wants, probably Joe Brady, the OC of the Buffalo Bills. All right, so if that happens, Burrow's not going to want out of Cincinnati. So I still think it's pretty unlikely, definitely a less than 5% chance Stafford is even available via trade, but I do think there is a small percent chance that it's possible, so I did want to mention it as the best case scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers on today's show. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. What is the best case scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers at quarterback next season? Is it Matthew Stafford? Is it somebody else? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Prize Picks. While I tell you about Prize Picks today, let me know what the best case scenario in your opinion is for the Steelers at the quarterback position next year. Now let's have a word from our sponsor today at Prize Picks, and it is officially holiday season, guys, and in my opinion, this is the best time of the year to be a sports fan. Bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes, it's all happening all at once, and while all that action is going on, there's one place where it feels so good to be right, and that is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is super simple to play. Just pick more than or less than at least 2 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. My favorite feature about Prize Picks is how you play is up to you. If you want a little bit more flexibility, you just want to have fun with it, you can choose the flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you're feeling really strong about a particular lineup, you can go for the bigger payouts with the power play. No matter how you play, though, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test and make some money. That is, if you know ball. So for this weekend's matchup against the Lions, I'm taking the more on passing yards for the red-hot Aaron Rodgers. I'm taking the more on Amon-Ra St. Brown receiving yards and the more on Jahmyr Gibbs reception. So download the Prize Picks app today to get a lineup in before Sunday's game and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, so talking about some more realistic veteran quarterback options outside of the best case scenario, which in my opinion is Matthew Stafford. And I'll start this list with Aaron Rodgers, the current starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Rodgers remains a very good option for the Steelers next season, especially if he can play well down the stretch. Of course, he still has that Super Bowl and playoff experience that I think give Rodgers and the Steelers an edge come playoff time. Also, it'd be his second year in the system, and we all know the second year in a system, second year with your guys at receiver, leads to more comfortability. More comfortability means, more potential, more success, and that would be a good thing. Also, he would come cheap, all right? You would be able to sign him for a discount because Rodgers would be entering his final season of his career, or presumably, and you would be able to go out and get talent around him, and you would get a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback here in Aaron Rodgers for, maybe a $10 million or maybe even a less than that price tag, and that would definitely be a value for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Also, he plays really well in the cold. Obviously, that's important when you play in the AFC North. We're seeing that unfold right now. And then also, he helps the offensive line by getting the ball out quickly. We saw last year under Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, who would hold the ball for an eternity, how much that would just derail the offense. You take a sack and, the drive is over. Not with Aaron Rodgers. Currently, this team has given up the lowest pressure rate among any offense in the league by 4 points. All right, it's been awesome to see this offense protect the quarterback this year, and part of that is Rodgers getting the ball out as fast as he does. Now, I do think at this point, Aaron Rodgers is the most likely QB1 option for Pittsburgh. He's playing pretty well right now. He's 11th in passer rating among NFL quarterbacks this season, so he's not the issue. He's doing a really good job, especially at age 42. And, if they make the playoffs this year and he finishes strong this year, I guarantee you Cam Hayward is going to call up his buddy Aaron Rodgers and say, hey, it's my final season in the NFL too. Why don't you come back for one more year and we can try and win a championship together? I think, Mike Tomlin would love that. I think the rest of the locker room would love that. They all love Aaron. So I think that at this point, that is still the most likely scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers next year. But another option that will be out there is Kyler Murray. Now, I know Kyler's not for everybody. The Kyler, the small jokes, the Call of Duty jokes, all this different stuff. But Kyler is a talented quarterback. He's a former number 1 overall pick. And, there's been years where he's been in the MVP conversation. And another thing, too, that you have to take into account with this conversation surrounding Kyler is that he is Mike Tomlin's exact type of quarterback. All right. What I mean by that is, he can run the football and he doesn't throw the ball over the middle of the field too often because he can't see over the middle of the field. And that's a little bit of an issue in my opinion, but it's something that I do think Mike Tomlin would be very attracted to when it comes to Kyler's profile. All right. He is still a dynamic rusher of the football. And, if you bring him here and you can really take advantage of his legs, that would give this Steelers offense an edge. He does avoid the middle of the field, which would, theoretically lead to less turnovers. He is a great playmaker out in space, and as a scrambler, he's got fantastic pocket presence that he's always had going back to his Oklahoma days, and his arm talent. Like, it's not the strongest arm in the world, but he can throw from any platform because he's so compact. He can throw from a bunch of different angles, and he can throw with awesome touch down the field. He does have a lot of arm talent that way, and then, he has multiple years left on his contract, so if you trade for him, you'd be getting him for multiple seasons at just 28 years old, which is not old at all for a starting quarterback in this league, in a league where you play into your late 30s. So you could get a decade out of Kyler Murray if things work out for him here in Pittsburgh. And I don't think he's going to be that expensive either. Now, it's very possible the Cardinals say, who are we going to get that's better than Kyler? And they just keep him for another season. But it definitely seems at this point the relationship between Kyler and the Cardinals is devolving. And I do think he'll be traded at some point this season. Maybe it costs a 3rd-round pick. Maybe it costs as much as a 2nd. I don't think, given the way that it's gone the last couple of years in Arizona, Arizona that he's going to go for a first-round pick. But, the Steelers have multiple third-round picks. If you trade one of them for Kyler Murray, who is a legitimate starter in this league, there's worse things you could do at the quarterback position, in my opinion. Then you get to Daniel Jones, and, honestly, Danny Dimes is not my favorite option. I think he's pretty milquetoast. I think he's, generally speaking, very conservative. Now, he does have great size. He's generally pretty accurate. I think his mental processing took a leap this year in Indianapolis. But he's somebody that hasn't put up necessarily stellar production outside of this year. And he's not somebody that's known as somebody that's got great pocket presence. He's not somebody that's known as a dynamic playmaker or anything like that. He needs a really good surrounding cast around him. And now that he's going to be coming off an Achilles tear, I don't know if I trust his legs as much as I would, this year. So he had a very good season for him. Good for him this year. My guess is he's back in Indianapolis next year. That's probably where he should go. But then another guy that, I think a lot of people will not want in this fan base, but I think would be a better option than people think, is Geno Smith. Now, Geno is having a terrible season in Las Vegas, all right? Like, the fans there in Las Vegas hate him. He's playing terribly. He's throwing a lot of turnover-worthy plays, and he hasn't been the solution. He's not capable of carrying a roster, and with a team as bad as the Las Vegas Raiders, with a quarterback like Geno, who's just, I would say he's more of a trailer and he's not much of a truck in terms of driving the ship there. He needs a good roster around him. It's been a disaster when you've combined him with that Raiders roster this year. They can't pass protect. They can't run the football. They have no weapons. They got a terrible defense. It's just everything colliding into Geno Smith here. And, I really think that situation with Las Vegas, you could put Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen on that Raiders team and they would win 4 to 6 games. That's how bad that Raiders team has been. I mean, those reports about Chip Kelly coming up about how disorganized he was as the offensive coordinator of that football team, I don't think that's an environment that any quarterback could have had success in this year. And we've seen guys go from really bad situations to better situations and play a lot better. All right, Baker Mayfield from the Browns in Carolina to LA and to Tampa, completely different quarterback. All right, Daniel Jones from the New York Giants to the Indianapolis Colts, completely different guy, right? So I think Geno is somebody that we've seen over the last half decade have a lot of success when he's got some talent around him. And we do have some talent here in Pittsburgh for him to work with. And I think he'd be a better fit here in Pittsburgh than people might give him credit for because he's having a bad season in Las Vegas. All right, he's got the arm strength to play in the AFC North, has one of the strongest arms in the league, actually. Has been at tops in the league in big-time throw percentage for many seasons now before this year in Las Vegas. But he also has experience playing with DK Metcalf, so if Rodgers retires, you got a guy here in Geno with a strong arm that can throw the deep ball to DK. Also, he's a very proficient play-action passer. Las Vegas has asked him to play more in the shotgun this year. He's much better under center in the play-action game. That's something that I would love to see here in Pittsburgh. Also, the Steelers organization just, is the tide that raises all boats here. All right, and I'm going to explain what that means here in a second. But also, he would come cheap after a season like this. He'd be able to, get cut by the Raiders, sign for like the vet minimum here in Pittsburgh or something like that. And, he would be extremely cheap to bring in as somebody that, very recently was a good starting quarterback in this league with Seattle that just had a down year here in Las Vegas. So you guys can take a look here at where Aaron Rodgers was in his production last year versus where Geno Smith is with the Raiders this year. You guys can see very similar numbers, identical success rates, identical yards per attempt numbers. Geno's actually been more accurate than Rodgers was last year with the New York Jets. All right, now Rodgers had the slightly better passer rating, but you guys can see, man, very similar numbers between these two quarterbacks. And you guys have to remember, a lot of people in this fan base didn't want to bring in Rodgers last offseason either, but then, you bring him into Pittsburgh here, a better organizational structure, and he's so much better. You guys take a look here at the defense or with Rodgers this season. I mean, he's elevated his passer rating by over 8 points. All right, he's top 11 in the league in passer rating right now. The yards per attempt jumped, the completion percentage over expected jumped, the success rate went up a little bit this year, and the adjusted EPA per play went up as well. So, Rodgers is a much better quarterback because of the organizational structure that's found here in Pittsburgh, and there's at least an argument that Geno Smith would do the same if he were to be signed here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I will say, if the Steelers sign Geno, you should probably also draft a quarterback, because if Geno sucks, you can just go to the younger quarterback option, right? But there is a reasonable idea here that Geno Smith could go to the better organization here in Pittsburgh and play better than what he's played in Las Vegas this year. Then the final quarterback that I want to talk about today is Mac Jones of the San Francisco 49ers. Now, there's a lot of people starting to connect Mac to the Steelers. And, he's played very well this year in Kyle Shanahan's offense. All right, he's top 10 in a lot of key metrics that you look at, like success rate and completion percentage over expected and on-target percentage. He's been very accurate this year. Now, the two numbers I want to point your attention to of why I think that this might be a little bit of fool's gold is he's 34th in big-time throw percentage, so there's a lot of stuff that's being schemed open for him. And the average depth of target. It's a lot of dump-offs. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have a very high average depth of target either. But my worry with Mac Jones, guys, is what does he look like, one, outside of Kyle Shanahan calling the plays for him, and then two, does he have the arm to play in the AFC North? I don't know if he does, all right? He's not really ever been known as a guy with a strong arm. And as we've seen, recently here in the Monday Night Football game against Tua, who doesn't have a good arm, you can't play in the cold late in the season if you don't have a good arm playing in this division. So, I think Mac's arm is better than Tua's. I want to make that abundantly clear. But is it good enough to consistently play as well as, say, Aaron Rodgers has this year, who has a complete rifle for an arm, even at 42 years old? I just have that concern about Mac Jones coming to Pittsburgh because of the conditions that they play in December and January. But my best guess, like I said earlier in the show, guys, is that Rodgers will be back as QB1 in 2026, and I'd be really down for that, especially if he finishes the season strong. I'm 100% down with Aaron Rodgers coming back next year. If you want to draft a quarterback early, you can do that and have them develop behind Rodgers. If you want to give Will Howard another year to develop behind Rodgers, you can do that route. It gives you some options there. And if the goal is to try and win a Super Bowl in 2026 in Cam Hayward's final season with the team, bringing a quarterback back for the first time in a while here, somebody that has experience in the offense, experience with the guys he's throwing to, that would be a good thing and a positive thing to try and get this team to compete in 2026, in my opinion. So predict it for me down there in the comment section. Who will be Pittsburgh's Week 1 starting quarterback next season? In my opinion, right now, my best guess is Aaron Rodgers, but it could be any of the other guys we talked about today. Is there somebody that I didn't mention today that you think could be the Week 1 starter? Let me know who you guys think down there in the comment section. And that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Talk by Chat Sports. We're going to have more content for you guys all throughout the weekend, getting you guys ready for Sunday's matchup against the Lions. So if you guys want extensive Steelers coverage all throughout the calendar year, this is where you guys get that. Click that subscribe button if you haven't already.